Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/slash Tales from Tech Support. In today's episode, shoe company loses much more than my business. My always late ex-friend made us 30 minutes late to a surprise birthday party, so I sent her to an expensive restaurant with an empty gift card to prove a point. Lie about having COVID to take 6 weeks off while I do your work for free? I'll throw an all-office party to announce where you really were. They parked in my spot that I pay for, so I blocked them in all day. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Shoe company loses much more than my business. Several years ago, I bought a pair of shoes from a retailer that was primarily online. Once I received my shoes, I wore them around my house to try them out. They weren't comfortable, so I returned them. Apparently, that use created a micro bend in the leather, which made their appearance slightly less than brand new. They told me they were refusing to refund my money for the shoes. I went back and forth with them for a few days, and they kept refusing to refund my money, but did offer to mail me back the shoes I could not wear because they were poor quality and hurt my feet. Eventually I contacted PayPal, provided my tracking number for the return, and my money was returned. Here's the fun part. While going through this drama, I discussed the situation with one of my good friends. About a month after this incident, she texts me a picture of a shoe box and asks, "Is this the brand that wouldn't refund your return?" I answer in the affirmative, to which she replies, "You tell them your friend works at the second biggest REI in the country, where footwear is the top selling department, and I'm telling every customer I see not to buy their shoes." I didn't end up telling them anything, but their brand is no longer carried at our local REI. Should have just given me my damn refund. I wonder how much this wound up costing them. My always late ex-friend made us 30 minutes late to a surprise birthday party, so I sent her to an expensive restaurant with an empty gift card to prove a point. A few years ago, I, 22F, had a friend, Alex, 24F, who was always late. She was also the kind of person who would tell you I'm on my way, when she was not, in fact, on her way. That one trait of hers caused me quite a lot of inconvenience. One time, we both were invited to a surprise birthday party for our mutual friend. Clearly written on the invitation was something along the lines of "Be sure to arrive at 6 p.m. Do not be late, or you will miss the surprise." Come the day of the party, she and I had agreed to meet at my house and drive over together. Around 5 p.m., I asked her when she would be at my place. She told me she would be there around 5:30, which was great because the party was about 30 minutes away. At 5:30, I called her to ask where she was, and she told me she had not even left yet. She then promised that she would be there in 5 minutes. I figured that was okay, because she lived fairly close by. Long story short, she ended up getting to my house at 6. I was mad. We left immediately, and made it to the party around 6:30. By that time, the surprise had obviously taken place, and the party was in full swing. I mentioned to her that I was really bothered that she had been late. Not only that, but she had strung me along and lied to me and prevented me from being on time. She responded by saying things like, "It's not that big of a deal, and we were only 30 minutes late, and don't be so dramatic." At that point, I was sick of her being late and her attitude. Being late, lying, and downplaying someone's feelings are all rude. So, I went to a nearby steakhouse and took a gift card without putting any money on it. I wrote $30 on the card and gave it to her a few days later, telling her it was a random gift for being my friend. A few days after that, I got a text from her asking if I was sure I activated the card. I told her yes, I was sure, and asked her why she was asking. She responded by saying she had gone to the restaurant with some friends without her purse and tried to use the gift card, but it wasn't working. It was at that point that I gave myself away by responding with, "Oops. I guess I was wrong, and it's not that big of a deal, and you're only $30 short." She immediately picked up on what I was doing, and I proceeded to receive a few very angry texts about how embarrassed she was and how rude and disrespectful I was for doing that. All of this just because I was a few minutes late, blah blah blah. I simply responded with, "So you're saying if I tell you one thing then do another, and it directly impacts your life in a negative way, that is disrespectful? And if you get mad at me for it and I downplay your feelings, that is rude? Am I understanding you correctly?" She didn't respond. I found out later that none of her friends were willing or able to cover her dinner, so she had to stay about 30 minutes later for her parents to rescue her. We didn't talk much after that. Hopefully, she learned a valuable lesson. I sure had a great time teaching it. Lie about having COVID to take 6 weeks off while I do your work for free? I'll throw an all-office party to announce where you really were. Mid-pandemic, my boss disappeared. Just as we were gearing up for our most challenging, time-intensive project in the last 5 years, he dropped off the face of the earth. We kept working for a week or so without him because everything was virtual, and the virtual work world was still so new, we didn't really need him. We were delegating tasks ourselves and completing things on our own. We spoke to coworkers maybe twice a week. But some decisions were beyond our discretion, so we could not move forward on those aspects of the project until we received a response from him. After about 7 to 10 total days of silence, we called his boss's boss, who informed our team that our boss had COVID so wasn't able to work right now. We took that at face value, of course, sent him letters of well wishes and didn't bother him with work stuff or ask why he was able to notify his boss, but not us. 3 weeks go by. Still not a word. We're beginning to discuss amongst ourselves whether or not he's maybe died. We're terrified and horrified and so concerned. We're contemplating calling his extended family. We're sending flowers and care packages to his apartment. Meanwhile, the project has descended into chaos because no leader was appointed in our boss's stead, so we are forced to navigate several layers of bureaucracy in order to accomplish most anything at all, whereas in the past he would have just signed off in real time. Around week 4 or 5, one of our coworkers suggests he doesn't really have COVID, but is instead using it as an excuse to take time off. We all jump all over our coworker, asking how he could insinuate something like that, and lamenting about what a tragedy our boss is probably living through. People were chilly to him for days after that. Week 7. We're undertaking a letter-writing campaign to upper management demanding an acting boss be appointed while ours is recovering. The project is a month behind schedule. We're all working overtime every day, sometimes on weekends, without extra compensation, just to keep up with the cluster F***ck of the boss's sudden absence. Week 8. He finally reappears, logging into a morning meeting as though nothing happened. He looks well rested, well fed, and has a tan. Not at all like someone who's just come out the other side of a 6-week respiratory virus. He says something quickly to the effect of, "Yeah, that was brutal. Glad to be better and glad to be back. Let's get to work." But doesn't want to talk about what happened or answer any of our questions like, "Were you in the hospital? What was it like?" etc. Fast forward to about 4 or 5 months after this. My sister sends me a promo for a fairly new reality show. I'd never heard of it, but it's on a major platform, and says, "Isn't this guy a friend of yours or something?" I swear I've seen him and you together. I watched the trailer for this show, and lo and behold, there's my boss, participating as a contestant on a reality TV show. It did not take long for me to put the pieces together and realize he took extended leave to go on TV, that he knew he wouldn't otherwise get during this massive project, and lied about it under the guise of a vicious disease that nearly all of us had lost a loved one to. I sit and stew with this information, unsure of how to handle it. I know confronting him won't get me very far, but I can't just do nothing, right? I'm not close enough with any of my colleagues to discuss this with them and trust that they wouldn't run off and send an all-company email about it. So I slept on it a few nights and then the opportunity fell right in my lap. I got an email from corporate encouraging teams still working remotely to plan virtual social functions to keep a collegial culture going and to stay in touch. Among the suggestions were game night, trivia, and watch party. With the premiere of the show only a couple weeks away, I got busy telling everyone how I'd been meaning to get into this show, and it's so enticing and exciting, basically laying the groundwork to guilt them into coming to an impromptu virtual watch party off hours. I offered to get special shirts made up and send them to each person's house. Whatever I had to do to get the attention of corporate. Finally, I sent an EV to all my boss's bosses, and any other members of corporate I could justify inviting without making a total as of myself. Because this is entirely virtual, my boss is unable to overhear any of the chatter. He doesn't realize I'm hyping up this show, and he doesn't realize I've planned a watch party for it. I wasn't inviting him unless he had the balls to explicitly ask about it. I was hoping he wouldn't have heard about it at all. Not until afterwards. That was really the only way this could work. The night comes and I am screen sharing the show to a whopping 64 people. A huge chunk of my department. Many members of corporate had showed up because I was the only person stupid enough to buy into their virtual social work party scheme, so they felt pressured to support it. I was holding my breath, hoping this would go my way, bracing myself for some kind of curveball. But there wasn't even that dramatic of a build-up. Right at the outset they introduced the premise, which included the contestants being in a COVID-safe bubble in an exotic location, and gave a brief overview of each contestant. As my boss was introduced, right down to what he did for work, and I could see people register delight and surprise, then go blank, just before sliding into confusion and rage. The chat took a drastic turn from "oh my goodness" and "I knew him when," and all sorts of pithy jokes to a brave member of my team, or perhaps one just pushed a tad too far by all the extra hours he pulled in this douche's absence, sent the message, "Wait, when was this filmed?" My audience dropped from 64 to 58 to mid-30s, and by the time the episode was over it was just me and the other 15 core members of the team. One asked if I'd already known, but some members of the team are very close to the boss, so all I said was, "Well, I definitely do now." And wrapped up the call pretty quickly after that. Perhaps one of the best bonuses is that you could already tell from episode 1 that the character arc the show assigned to our boss was bumbling idiot. He had his true colors on in full display, and some production massaging up them to the 11th degree. Boss was fired. My good buddy was promoted to his place. I am an office legend now, especially since no one is 100% sure whether or not it was intentional. And it was all so satisfying that it was almost worth the dozens of hours of uncompensated overtime that led to it. They parked in my spot that I pay for, so I blocked them in all day. In my complex, we have specifically assigned spots that you have to pay for. This person, I guess, doesn't want to pay for a spot, so they park on the street all the time. It's doable, but a huge pain in the ass since you can't leave it overnight without a notice from management. The first time they had done this I confronted them as I happened to catch them as they were getting out of their car. They claimed they lived in the townhouse right next to my spot, but that someone had parked there, so they parked in my spot. That would make sense to me if I had ever seen their car park in that spot before, and that the car that was there wasn't there all the time anyway. Also, the owner of the car was screaming at me while their friend was the calm one. I was fed up because other strangers had parked in my spot before, making me have to park out on the street. For context, yes, we do have garage doors as it's an underground parking, but management has never gotten them operational for some reason. So this same person eventually parked in my spot once again, and I was done. Normally I'd just call security, and they'd come to threaten to tow the car, but because it's COVID they're not sending out people unless it's a serious situation. So, I happily parked my car right behind theirs. Luckily I own a tiny car, so it's small enough to effectively double park, but still leave even big SUVs to get by in our underground parking. I left a note on my car saying "Note to management/security, car with license XXXXXXXX parked in my spot. I'll be out of town until tomorrow. If any problems, call me with the number on file." Of course, I wasn't out of town at all. Then I came back, went out for a day to give them time to get their car, and I have never seen it parked in my spot since, only on the street.